Hey everybody, it's Clark at HPS Law Group. This is part 4 of my series on patents. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about utility patents, and we're going to talk about the provisional versus non-provisional patent application. So when you file a utility, your patent attorney will ask you, or you'll find as you're doing your research, that you can file either a provisional or a non-provisional patent application. So here's the difference. On a provisional patent application, there are no formatting requirements, and it has a much cheaper fee to file it. So you can file photographs, you can file a PowerPoint presentation, you can file a write-up, you can file whatever you want in that provisional application, and it just goes right in. The provisional application really just goes into a vault. No one's going to look at it. It does nothing unless and until you file a non-provisional patent application that claims priority back to the provisional application. Again, anything can get filed as a provisional application. The filing fee is really cheap. It's only $75 if you're a micro entity. It's $150 if you're a small entity, and I'll talk about the difference between those in a later video. And it just sits. When you file your non-provisional, if you file the provisional, you claim priority back to that provisional. And that means that your non-provisional application will be treated as if it was filed 12 months earlier whenever you filed the provisional patent application. The key is your provisional application has to, it's called enable your non-provisional application. So whatever ends up getting claimed, whatever you end up staking out as your monopoly that you're claiming for your patent, it has to be enabled in the provisional to claim priority back to it. That means that the information, whatever it is and you have in your slide deck or your photos, has to teach someone who has skill in the art, ordinary skill in the art, like regular Joe Schmo that practices these things. It has to be able to teach them how to make and use the invention. And if it does that, then you can claim that priority date back. So that's the purpose of it. And really the intention is to give people a little bit of a runway so that if they have this invention but they're not sure that it's worth the investment of going for a full non-provisional application, they have these 12 months where they can test the market, file something simple and cheap, test the market, see if it's worth continuing to explore to file the non-provisional. And that's where it gets more expensive. So the non-provisional application has very strict requirements. It has to be in a very specific format. There are parts that I'm going to talk about in a later video on what exactly needs to be in there, but it's a lot, and it needs to be done a certain way. It also has much higher filing fees. So the filing fee for a non-provisional for a micro entity is $430. If you're a small entity, or $480. If you're a small entity, it's $830. So those fees are quite a bit bigger. Once you file the non-provisional, that's when it gets put in a queue, or it gets in line. It gets looked at by an examiner. A patent examiner is going to determine if it has everything that it needs to in order to be allowed for patentability. And then the examiner will determine whether or not you're going to get your patent and what the scope of those claims are going to be when it gets issued. It takes a while for the examiners to get around to them. Right now it's around 18 months before an examiner is going to be able to take a look at that patent application. It will then, usually they're going to tell you, they're going to reject it first off, and you have to respond with an amendment to try to get that through. And then it takes several interactions with the patent examiner before it gets through. So the reasons to get the provisional application is cheaper. It's easier, it's cheaper. You can potentially do it yourself. You can, there's some risk there. The non-provisional is clearly more expensive. The benefit is it's only when you file the non-provisional that it gets in line to get examined. So if you want to get your issued patent earlier, then you want to file straight to the non-provisional and not take that 12-month kind of benefit of the provisional application. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, we're always available at HPS Law Group to answer any of your questions, and I'll see you next time. I'll talk about what you need to have in your utility non-provisional patent application.